You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we have a very special guest, Areva Martin, author, award-winning civil rights attorney, talk show host, commentator, and go-to expert on compelling social issues. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to see you.
Good. Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. And first off, I want to just offer congratulations to your daughters, Michael and Morgan. I know we had the pleasure to feature them a few weeks back, and it's just terrific. You guys all look so happy in the family photos. And they're first-year law students at Columbia, and we featured them August 27th. Impressive young ladies, and you must be super proud of them right now. So
yeah, I am, and they really are having a fantastic time at Columbia. They love the school. The students have been so welcoming and embracing, and they're getting, really, this is, I think, the third week, so they are getting the full law school experience, studying at the library, getting introduced to all the different clubs and activities,
okay.
So it's going really well.
Did they get called on yet? Socratic method or what?
Yes, Michael had her first cold call by a professor on, I think she told me it was on the ACA, on Obamacare, and she said she, knew the answer, had some background in it from a job she had in her gap years, but had done the studying, so she was prepared. So she felt good, and her fellow students complimented her on her quick and really concise and accurate response. So things are going well.
Very good. Well, I hope to stay in touch with them, and of course, wish them my best.
I will. Thank you.
Yeah. So basically, on Lawyer Stories here, I know you've seen the Instagram feed and whatever. Like, we launched this podcast February of 2020, and we kind of go deeper into those stories. We talk about the why behind people go to law school, any motivations, inspirations, and challenges that they might have had through the law school. We don't get super political here. We just want to hear the background, and I think people connect that way. So that's basically what we do. So I did some reading, I did some homework, and I know that you grew up or were born and raised in St. Louis.
Yes, I am originally from St. Louis, Missouri, and made my way to the East Coast first, and then to the West Coast, where I, eventually settled down and started my law practice and started raising my family. But okay. Yes, I'm a true Midwesterner.
Gotcha. So to go back to St. Louis, what was that like growing up there before you decided to make the move out to Chicago for undergrad?
Yeah, St. Louis is, I like to say, a big, small town. I think it has about 300,000 people. So it's a pretty small community compared to Chicago or Los Angeles or New York. And the Midwest just, I think, has a unique charm about it. Folks care a lot about their homes. They care a lot about family. They care a lot about work. I tell people all the time, my strong work ethic is rooted in my upbringing in St. Louis. So
right.
A lot of basic things, religion, hard work, family, owning your own home, being self-sufficient are all really traditional Midwestern values.
So with college, how did you end up applying, saying, I want to go to University of Chicago?
Yeah, I had relatives. Even though I was in St. Louis, most of my family's from Peoria, Illinois, and many of them lived in the Chicago, Evanston area. So as a kid, I would visit that area. And as I was looking around, I wanted to leave St. Louis. I'm pretty sure I wanted to get an experience of traveling, but I didn't want to go super far. So I actually was all set to go to Washington University in St. Louis, which is, a world-class institution, but definitely one of the best colleges in Missouri. And then I got accepted to the University of Chicago and decided that I could have the best of both worlds. I could go to Chicago and be out of the city, but be close enough to St. Louis So that was really my thinking in terms of accepting the offer to go to the University of Chicago.
Got it. So when was the moment that it hit you like, I want to go to law school? Like, did you have like a moment where you said, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, I think it was my junior year of college, maybe the tail end of sophomore year, but the beginning of the junior year. And it was really inspired by some fellow students at the university. There were a couple of guys actually who I was pretty friendly with, and they were in their maybe senior year, and they had already applied to law school, and they were waiting acceptance letters and making plans. And it was, conversations with them and interacting with them, they really inspired me because, I looked at them and I figured that if they could do it, I could do it too. And they
Yep.
talked about, why it was a good decision. And so that was really it. After, spending time with them, talking with them, I made up my mind, yeah, this might be the right path for me as well. And I had always thought a lot about injustices, even though I hadn't put a
Yep.
term on it growing up. I saw the differences in how people in my community live and always had a lot of questions about those injustices, was really inquisitive about it, and wanted to do something about it. So I think the desire was always there from a very young age. And then these guys kind of, I would say they were the closing act for me in terms of making the ultimate decision. But I would say my real thoughts about it started much, much younger.
Gotcha. And you didn't like go to any old law school. Like you went to top of the top. You were at Harvard. Like what I was always intrigued by, like those top like Ivy League schools growing up. So like, what was that experience like?
It was really positive, and these guys, the guys that I'm talking about, they actually were on their way to Harvard too, so they were
Wow.
inspirational and helpful in terms of me making deciding which schools to apply to. I again applied to maybe 10 schools, and I was really fortunate. I got accepted at all 10, and I had choices. I had opportunity. I could have stayed at the University of Chicago. They have a outstanding law school. I think it's four in the
Right.
country
Yep.
behind
Very
Columbia.
good.
It's three. So I had an opportunity to go to Stanford, Yale. I had an opportunity to go pretty much go wherever I wanted to go. But again, Harvard for me, being first generation college graduate, first person in my family to go to law school, I just couldn't pass up that opportunity to go to an
For
Ivy League
sure.
school. And I had again relatives that lived in Boston, so I was
Yep.
also
There you
that was the
go.
connection for me as well, was to be in
Okay.
Boston. I had family there as
So you
well.
had been in Boston. I was going to say like Chicago, like Northeast, not so different. I actually live in Massachusetts.
Oh, okay. So
So
you know Cambridge well then, huh?
yeah, well, I live more central, but my wife is she was living out in that area when I met her. I just ended up here for like a job actually, but so I was going to say like Chicago. What was the transition like, really?
I had visited Boston a great deal growing up, so I knew the area. And so the cold weather, once you live in Chicago, you can live any place that has cold climate because Chicago's climate is so incredibly cold and windy. So the climate was not a big shock. And St. Louis too gets pretty cold weather and snow. So none of that was a big shock. In fact, Cambridge is a
Yeah.
much smaller town.
Right.
Boston is a much
Right.
smaller city than Chicago. So it was an easy transition having lived in Chicago. Living in Boston was easier because it was a much more walkable city than Chicago. You could get around a lot easier. Even though Chicago has a train system, Boston had really good, strong public transportation. And the law school is Cambridge is a pretty self-contained town. It's its own town, so it had everything that you would need. So you didn't really have to travel outside of Cambridge.
Yeah.
Although, because I had relatives living in the city, I frequently would. But it was a pretty easy transition.
Yeah. Okay. So that's good. And like when you were in law school, did you encounter like any what like would you say there were any challenges or like what like inspired you to sort of take off from there? You could talk about challenges or any inspirations or motivations that you had. That'd be great.
Yeah, I think the students. I mean, one of the things when you go to any law school, but definitely when you are at an Ivy League law school, you're with some of the brightest folks in the country, people who have graduated summa cum laude, magna cum laude,
Right.
valedictorians of their
Yep.
class. So the conversation is stimulating. You're inspired by the super ambition of the folks that are around you. Uh, Challenges, I don't think I didn't have any real challenges. The University of Chicago, provided me with just an excellent foundation, and I felt really prepared for the law school. I spent a lot of time talking once I decided to go to, other law students, and had gotten a pretty good lay of the land in terms of what to expect. So I didn't really face any challenges. If anything, like I said, I was constantly inspired by the conversations, by the experiences of my fellow students.
Right. So did you go to LA right after law school, or like what was your first job after
My
Harvard?
first job, well, I had a couple of great summer jobs. So one,
Okay.
I went back to St. Louis for a summer and worked at a firm there called Bryan Cave, which is
Nice.
a large corporate firm in St. Louis, and pretty sure they're still there. So I worked there for one summer, and then after my second summer, I actually went to New York, and I split the summer. I spent about 6 or 7 weeks in New York. I worked at Cravath, Swain and Moore on Wall Street, and I lived up in Harlem, right around the corner from Columbia. So I would
Okay.
cross that campus to actually catch the train down to Wall Street. And then I spent the second half of that second year summer, actually came to LA and worked at a big firm, maybe it was just going to be a month. So the last 4 weeks of the summer, uh, I spent here in Los Angeles. But I had visited Los Angeles before and had really fallen in love with the weather. So having lived in cold climates and windy
Yeah.
climates
Oh,
and
I
rainy
bet. Yeah.
climates,
Yeah.
to be at a place where every morning you wake up and the sun is shining
Oh,
was
I know.
such a big change, such a big difference for me.
I know the Northeast, it feels like winter comes. It gets dark at like 4 in the afternoon. So
Yeah,
I
it's
feel that.
linger on like through April sometimes, even like
Yeah.
May can be cold and rainy. So LA just has this really incredible weather that, it can be intoxicating.
Yeah. So you love that. Okay. So tell us, you do so many different things. I feel like I could ask you about like so many different aspects of your life. You wear a lot of hats. It's pretty amazing. So let's just start with Martin and Martin. Like you have had your firm for about 17, 18 years. And
Yeah, so I started my own law firm, and it's a civil rights practice. And at one point, I'm not sure if it's still has this distinction, but at one point it was the largest African American female-owned law firm and one of the largest African American-owned firms in Southern California.
wow, it's great.
And after practicing traditional, trial work, going into court, depositions, handling day-to-day, cases, I took a brief sabbatical to write a book
Mhm.
and started a nonprofit. And so that took me on a different journey, a different pathway.
Right.
I've since written 4 books, and
Yep.
still the nonprofit I've grown into a pretty large organization that I still have still have a lot of involvement with. And from there, I actually, while after I went back to work after having written a book, I actually started doing some media work. So that
Yep.
kind of also took off, and I started not just commentating, but actually hosting on television. And
Yep.
so now I kind of I see my life in 4 different buckets. My professional life, I have
Okay.
my firm life, I have my media life, I have my nonprofit life, and then recently I started a health tech firm called Butterfly Health.
Yep.
So I think of myself as kind of a serial entrepreneur.
It's great.
So I like what I love about this era that we live in is that as a lawyer, you can use your legal skills to do, so many different things, whether
Yeah.
it's media or, publishing world, or in my case, running a nonprofit or even starting a for-profit tech firm. So I just find that the foundation I got at law school and combined with my undergraduate degree in economics have just provided a great deal of versatility.
Oh, that's amazing. So like what advice would you give somebody who is a lawyer and like wants to be an entrepreneur? Like, I mean, I hear a lot of the time, like for me, I would say you have to, it takes patience, right? Like to build something, and it also, you have to like execute. Like you can have an idea, but you have to execute. But what would your like guidance be?
Yeah, learn what you're doing. That's the biggest lesson I would tell people. I didn't go to business school, and some days I wish I had gone to business school. So I learned how to run a business in the midst of running a business.
In the
Made a
business?
lot of mistakes early on,
Okay.
mistakes that I think I perhaps would have, avoided had I had a more solid business background. So I tell lawyers who are interested And even if you want to start your own practice, they don't teach you much about running a business. They don't teach you anything about running a law practice in
Right.
law school. They teach you how to litigate cases or negotiate contracts or, argue before a court, but they don't teach you the nuts and bolts. And a law firm is no different than, running a hamburger stand. You have the same issues,
Mhm.
the financial issues, HR issues, marketing, sales, all of those are business the components of any successful business. So I would tell a lawyer that's interested in running a law firm or running a tech business or a nonprofit or whatever kind of business you're thinking about running, do some studying on the side, take an online course, go to your local, community college, take a course in finance, take a course in marketing, organizational behavior. There are probably 4 or 5 really important courses that you want to take.
Yeah.
And then find yourself a good mentor, someone who, and that's
Yes.
one of the things I did do. I had a Harvard Law School, a woman who had graduated before me, who was in LA, who had been a successful entrepreneur, her own firm owner. So she was a great deal of help to me. So find someone that's been there, done that, and they can also really help you navigate the waters.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful advice to take the classes. And I think mentors are so underestimated, especially in law school where it's not like medical school, right? So like we learn a lot of theory, but we're not, unless you're really getting involved in like in the clinics and externships, you're not really learning that much of you're learning a lot of theory. So I think
It's
having a mentor,
actual practice, and that
right?
that
So
you got to
that's
get out there and
huge.
do it. You
I
got
love that. I totally agree with that. So I think one thing that you do that's super cool, and I think you kind of alluded to it, the Special Needs Network. I'd love to hear about that. I think it's a phenomenal program that you've started. So please tell us
Yeah, my,
about
my
that.
son was diagnosed with autism, and I was very confused, as a lot of parents are, about how to get the best services for him, how to find resources. And that was when I took my sabbatical. It was really to take some time to write a book about autism and advocacy, and to really get off the ground this nonprofit. And the nonprofit's mission, it works at the intersection of disability rights and social justice causes. And it's one of the premier autism social justice organizations in the state of California. I literally built it out of my law firm,
And,
started with my secretary, and
yep.
helping me. And now we have over 150 employees and a pretty sizable multi-million-dollar budget. And it was
Wow.
really responding to a need that
Mhm.
existed in the community, families who were seeking help but not finding many solutions.
Right.
And we provide mostly free services that range from direct services to kids, like a free summer camp that we run, to free advocacy and training programs for parents. And last year and a half since COVID, we were able to convert all of our programming to a virtual platform. We started doing these grab and go events. So, like for back to school, we did grab and go where we gave away food and backpacks for
So
kids.
important. So
Yeah, we did
nice.
grab and go with toys and food. So the website is specialneedsnetwork.org, and there are just a ton of services and resources there that people, even if you're not in the state of California, like I said, our virtual training program, we actually have one coming up in October. The information is applicable because a lot of it is federal law that we talk about. A
Okay.
lot of it is about warning signs and things that are universal that are not California specific.
So is it only parents that can go on and do the training, or can you be like a director of like social
Oh,
services?
absolutely.
Okay.
Professionals, it's
Yep.
available to professionals that work in this industry, social workers, school teachers, nurses, doctors. We've had,
That's
psychologists, we've
great.
had
Yeah.
people that work in other nonprofits. We've had people who don't have children. We've had grandparents or siblings or,
Right.
people who are friends of someone that may have a developmental disability. So it's definitely not limited to parents.
And I just want to repeat that you're helping people who otherwise can't usually help themselves. And the reason why I took sort of a vested interest, this is sort of something that I do. I'm building, but my full time, I am a lawyer licensed in 3 states, but I'm the executive director of 4 public housing authorities.
Oh,
So yeah, so I see every day like my staff helping people and doing the amazing thing of assisting some people who otherwise can't help themselves. In a lot of cases they can, but I think that's so important. It's such important work. So thank you for sharing.
yeah, no. So are those housing authorities in Massachusetts where you're
Yep,
at?
central. North
Okay.
Central Massachusetts. So we have one, and then contract agreements with 3 others. And I have a staff who's just very good, very seasoned. They've been there a
And
while.
what do you do for the housing authorities?
So as executive director, I manage. So we manage other properties. We make sure people get into housing authorities, like through the admissions process. We do, we do maintenance. I have a director of facilities, a director of housing management. So all the,
You're running the properties, you're managing
yeah, we're running the properties, but we got a grant. So I asked about the free training because I now have a resident service coordinator, and you never know when you're going to need those tools.
Yeah, have them log on to Special Needs Network. Have a lot of resources, and I'm sure
Yeah,
in the housing, units that you run, that there are parents there who have kids who are on the spectrum, or kids who have other developmental disabilities who
right.
could benefit from the services. So absolutely have her
Yeah.
check on,
Thank you. And as executive director, I also am a liaison with the state. I advocate for more money from the state so we can do our mod projects and things that need upgrading, windows and
Right.
just everything basically, because it's an old portfolio, but we have a lot of public housing. They're just not building any new public housing. So that
Yeah.
actually leads me to another question I want to ask you. You're sort of known, I think I saw this on the website, as like America's advocate. And
Yeah.
like, I love that. And I really kind of want to know what that means to you, because for me, I'm advocating for something that I think is pretty special. I need to have a job that makes me feel like I'm helping others. So I want to know like what you're
Yeah, for me, what that means, and I think that when people use it, I give voice to the voiceless. So,
like.
I always, I'm rooting always for the underdog, and I'm
Yep.
always trying to find ways to help, whether it's using my media platform, using the nonprofit, using my skills as a lawyer to stand up for those people who don't feel like they can stand up for themselves. They either don't know how, or maybe they have a physical disability, or something, that prevents them. It may be financial, it may be developmental, it may be any number of things. It may just be circumstances that they find themselves in. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to build a platform that allows me to do that. So,
Yeah, it's
whether
so
it's,
important that they have you too on
yeah,
your side,
it,
using
it,
your platform for that. It's so important. So thank you for doing those type of things. I think this is incredible. So I was doing some reading today, and I want to bring up a quote like from your mother that I think I read in another article about. Don't question, persevere. Is that something that you sort of live by? Is that
yeah,
sort of like a
that definitely
mantra?
is something I grew up with. And I think it's that good old Midwestern grit that
Okay.
is instilled in us from an early age. Life is going to throw you curveballs. You're going to face
Right.
obstacles, you're going to face challenges, and you always have choices. And and not necessarily in what happens to you, but always in how you respond to what happens to you. So I was taught to, don't challenge, don't question why you're going through a challenge or a difficult time. Just figure out a way to persevere and get, to the other side of that challenge. So
Right.
that's
Right.
what I try to live by. I've tried to instill in my kids, and I try to take to the work that I do on a daily basis.
Yeah. No. Thanks for sharing that with us. That's amazing. So you have a book coming out in October 26th. That's
Yeah,
like
at the end
about
of the
a
month.
month and a half away or
Yeah.
so. So Awakening, Ladies, Leadership, and the Lies We've Been Told, a call for gender equality in a post-COVID world. That's so like cutting
Yeah.
edge for a book. There it is.
Yeah.
Especially COVID. You got a book on like post-COVID out. So that's pretty cool. So like what can you tell us about it? Do you want to?
Yeah, I was motivated to write it during the
Yeah.
quarantine in California, and around March 22nd or so, the word came down that we were locked in our houses, and we were literally not to leave unless we were an essential worker or we were performing an essential function. And there
Right.
was confusion over if that included lawyers, but ultimately it did. And so I found myself at home with a lot of time. I worked from home already. I already had a home office,
Mhm.
but literally not being able to go out, and everything shutting down: restaurants, movie theaters, concert venues, conferences, things that you would typically do, and I lead a pretty active life, either were finding their way online, and in the early days, not a lot of people were set up to totally form their businesses to online. So
Right.
I did what a lot of folks did. I binged the Tiger King, and I was watching a lot of
Yeah.
Netflix. And then one morning I had a revelation that we're going to be here for a while,
Yeah.
because we're going to be
Well,
here.
it's true. If I stopped right there, it was like same thing for me. It's like, okay, well, in 2 weeks we'll have a meeting. All right, well, I guess in 3 weeks and then it just like kept going and going and going, right?
Yeah, that was it. We were told it was 2 weeks originally in California, but I have a
Right.
lot of friends in politics and government, so I knew it wasn't going to be 2 weeks. So I had this kind of inside information, but no one knew how long it would be. But so after binging a lot of Netflix and missing my exercise routine because all the gyms and all of that
Right.
shut down, and you were told not to interact with anyone outside of your household. I mean, so the rules were pretty restrictive when you think
Yeah.
back to where we were in March of 2020. So one day I woke up and said, hey, you got to get off the couch. You got to, take off those pajamas you've been wearing. You got to turn the TV off. And that's when I thought about, you know what, I'll write. I'll do what I love to do. I love to write. I love to read. I'm a history buff. So I decided to write. And what was really, resonating me at the moment was what was happening by May. Now we're into May. What was going on with George Floyd and the
Yep.
aftermath of George Floyd, and the conversations that we started having last summer around. I had already been thinking about writing a women's leadership book, but I hadn't played around with a couple of different ideas, had written outline, but it really came to me in the summer that I wanted to take advantage of the conversations we were having about reimagining policing, and thought about the parallels to what was happening around policing to some of the systems and structures that are in place that I felt have been holding women back in many situations. So the book really uses those conversations about reimagining policing to draw some parallels and to really call out, things that have been told to women for centuries and decades that we've bought into, that, in my opinion, are just lies. They're just flat out lies, and we perpetuate them. And like we were saying in the case of policing, it was time, for a reckoning. This is what this book is. It's a female manifesto of sorts,
Okay.
and it's an opportunity for women to really think about how they move about the world and how the world is moving around them.
That's
So.
interesting. Yeah, that's good. Can you hold it up again?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is an advanced copy, not for resale, but I got the book to kind of look it over, and a
Of
couple of
course. Yeah.
we have copies available. It's already available for pre-order on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com, and it'll be in bookstores very shortly.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations. I know you do have a
Thank
few
you.
other books. So I just want to ask, like, what advice would you give somebody becoming a lawyer, or who wants to go to law school?
Yeah, the advice I would give someone is maybe take a year off right before college, because what I'm hearing from most students is that they get the most out of law school when they are slightly older. And I look back at my own law school experience and think, had I been a little more mature, I probably would have gotten more out of it as well.
Yeah.
So I tell people, think about, where you are on your journey, how mature you are. And there are a lot of great programs now that people can do during a gap year, whether it's working or traveling, overseas, or working for a nonprofit. There's a lot you can do to gain some life experiences that I think will help you be able to take advantage more fully of what law school has to offer. And then I say, be sure you're ready to make the kind of commitment to the 3 years that it takes if you're going to go full time as a student to get the most out of it. And then think about what you want to do. A lot of law students, on my show, the Special Report, did a show recently on student loan debt,
Oh,
and talked to a young man who is, I think he's 5 years out of law school. He has about $285,000 in
yeah.
debt.
Yeah.
And, he says it's going to take over 20 years to pay it
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
So, this has got to be something you really want to do, and
Yeah.
you're going to commit yourself to it. If you don't have a mother-father trust fund that's going to pay for it, you may
It's so
find
right.
yourself having to borrow $150,000 to $200,000 if you go to, a top tier law school. So that's a big financial commitment. I mean,
It is.
that's for some people, depending on the state, $285,000 is more than a home mortgage.
It
You
is.
can buy
Yeah,
a house
that's true.
in certain parts of the country. So, you got to be smart about it. You got to be really prudent about what you're doing and making sure, talk to people who've been through it. Like, this guy said, he went to some law school, one of these for-profit law schools. They ended up going out of business and took out these horrible loans.
Oh boy.
So, that the one thing you don't want to do is that. So you definitely want to get some good advice. I go back to that mentor point. Find someone that's been through the process and make sure you're getting some good advice.
Yeah, I think that's such important advice, and it's terrific. I mean, I think like you see law school, this big thing, and the pillars, and I'm going to do this when I get out, and like then you have so much debt. I get it. I think that's wonderful advice. So you wrote this other book I kind of want to ask you about real quick, Make It Rain.
Yeah.
About I feel like that sort of ties in. It's like how to use media to revolutionize your business and brand. Like, did you want to just touch on that? I think that's pretty interesting. I'm going to do some more
Yeah,
research
no,
on
well,
that.
it's a book I had a lot of fun with. Actually became a national bestseller.
Yeah.
Really, it's a book about, finding your authentic voice and figuring out what that voice is and then how you amplify that voice. I wrote it. It came out in 18, so started writing it at the end of 16, and just wanted to share with people what I had learned about how I had found my authentic voice as an advocate and how I was amplifying it in the media. So that book is all about, you taking advantage as you are now with this podcast on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, all the different channels that are available for people to
Yeah.
speak out and to have a voice and to, get their opinions into the zeitgeist and
Yeah.
talk to folks and find your tribe and have interesting conversations. And for some people, build businesses, attract clients, make partnerships, do deals. You can do all of that now, in ways that you couldn't even imagine
On the
doing.
cell phone, right? You could pick up your
Oh
cell
my
phone and do
God, your
all those
phone,
things.
yes.
Never could do that when I
Never
was
could do
growing
that.
up. Now it's
You build a whole brand on a cell phone
yeah.
and, conduct a whole business. So I wanted to share that with people, and I've been fortunate enough through that book to be able to do that.
That's awesome. So I just want to ask you one more thing about Special Report. Are you having fun with that? Like where we can catch it?
Yeah, your Special Report is this web-based talk show that I've been doing for I started in March, right when COVID hit of 2020. So I'm into like 14, 16 months. I have interviewed close to 1,000 people.
Wow.
And some of the nation's leading experts, people with interesting stories. I've been having a ball. I mean, we talk about everything: abortion rights, gun laws, voting. During the holidays, we did fun sessions on cooking and gift giving.
Great.
We did a remembrance of 9/11, tackling a lot of issues. So it's a show that kind of rips from the headlines, but we do the story behind the story. So we talk to folks in long form interviews. So what I do on CNN is typically short form interviews. You may do 3-minute segments. You may do 5-minute segments on breaking news. So we'll take some of that same breaking news, like the Texas abortion, and we'll do a single issue show on abortion rights and then bring in different voices. So we'll have a lawyer at the ACLU that was responsible for filing the petition to the Supreme Court. We'll talk to a minister about, the whole issue about, the morality that some people talk about as it relates to abortion rights. And we'll talk to reproductive justice advocates who are on the grounds fighting for women and their reproductive rights. So we get to cover an issue that's being talked about in the media, talked about on social media, but bring in different voices and do it in a long interview format.
Wow. Well, congratulations on that. I mean, I think it's really cool that you get to touch on like all these different social issues and talk to so many interesting people. So it just sounds like just a fun job. I mean, doesn't get better than that, right? I mean, that's awesome. So did I leave anything out that you wanted to bring up?
Oh, great. I think we've hit it all. My career, my family, and my new book, which, I'm super excited about. Like I said, people can go and pre-order it now. I'll be doing a ton of virtual book tours
Oh,
and
cool.
some
Okay.
in-person stuff as well. So I'll be, on sitting here in this desk a lot, talking to folks like you, which I'm super excited about
That's
doing.
awesome. Very good. Well, thank you so much for your time.
You're
If
welcome.
you could stay right there, I'm going to just sign off. And Areva Martin, what a pleasure to have you. Wherever you are in the world today, enjoy yourselves. Cheers.